records across different organizations and geographic areas in order to accurately and effectively consolidate and maintain dosimetry records. This was the problem statement as it was posed to our team at the beginning of the i4NS sequence. Immediately, our team rushed off to form an initial hypothesis towards solving the problem that came from our own prior understanding of digitalizing shared data. RHOs, we thought, should be provided with a cloud-based storage platform to reduce the logistical burden of a paper and mail-based system. However, over the course of our interview process, it became readily apparent that this solution was overly simplistic. While temporarily stumped, we did manage to hit our first major finding, that there existed a gap between the reported and actual levels of radiation dosage. Investigation into this gap brought us to conversations with the three major stakeholders in the dosimetry game: enlisted personnel working within radiological environments, RHOs, and command-level personnel. Conversations with these three groups elucidated the process further, and we came to understand that the existing record-keeping system had three major components: TMID, i4NS, and the archives at NDC. We also understood the major priorities of the database: security, accessibility, and accuracy. Thus, we came upon our blockchain solution. Blockchain technology's primary purpose is to allow for a distributed storage network of disparate components to be linked together without introducing the vulnerabilities of total consolidation. Each submitted record from an i4NS or TMID database would add one block to a private chain hosted at NDC, which would then be internally verified against the other blocks, making the system tamper-proof. Introducing dashboard and tiered access functionality further simplifies the submission and auditing processes to reduce both logistical and human-based error and to allow for data tracking to prevent information loss or leakage. As we seek to explain in our presentation, it is this solution that we believe will solve the initial challenge. Thank you for your attention.
Hi, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are honored and excited to have you here. Welcome to our final presentation of the Dosimetry team. I'm Shani.
Austin Zhang.
I'm Kelly.
And I'm Becky.
In this quarter, we conducted 24 interviews, 2 field trips, and you can see our problem sponsor on the left and our advisors on the right. So at first, when we saw this problem, we knew nothing about the Navy nor the dosimetry. I couldn't even say that word for 2 weeks. But the first thing we thought is like, this is how we kind of feel. We were confused. We didn't know how to approach it. So the first thing we did is we did our first MMC. Now, don't look at this monster yet. MMC is the mission model canvas that helps us to better organize our ideas so we know how to approach this solution, hopefully. So the big highlights, you can see here, we got to our 3 beneficiaries. You have the commanders on the top, radiation health officer, and of course our sailors. So we took our boots and got out of the building. We went to 2 field trips. We went to the Balboa Hospital and the shipyards. We spoke with a lot of RHO, and the first thing we asked them is what kind of problems you guys are facing with. And boy, we heard some horror story. The first story we heard is that they're sending with a snail mail about 400 PDFs. The second story we heard is that they spent 20 hours on a 3-year gap per one individual. And the most extreme story we heard is that one person went on a visit on a shipyard and his data was never reported to the NDC, and guess what? It will never be reported. So that was our first highlight. We said, okay, it's a slow process. So we said it's also missing data, of course. So we said, okay, let's see how the data feels. Let's see how the data goes through all those people. So you see it has about 6 stations. Just to clarify, each station have a 30-day to transfer it to the next station. So this is a long process. And Austin is going to continue.
Thank you. So here's what we did about that. After speaking to RHOs, understanding the huge logistical gap that the current system had, we built our first MVP. Based on our own understanding of digitalizing data solutions, we figured at first that the most elegant solution would be a Google Drive or a Dropbox style infrastructure. This will allow for officers to seamlessly upload data that all parties would have access to that could be easily edited and transferable. therefore eliminating the logistical burden of snail mail and paper-bound systems. So why didn't this work? Well, lack of security, lack of approval, and over-consolidation. As it turns out, though those initial conversations were useful, we had drastically oversimplified the problem and hyper-focused on the logistical burden without fully understanding the nature of the problem. We came to our second major finding at this point, that dosimetry records are sensitive and secure information, and that we can't simply integrate them into a cloud-based software and expect the problem to elegantly solve itself in that manner. Here we learned that there's actually several bigwig players in the dosimetry game. BUMED, the Bureau of Medicine and Surgery, Naval Dosimetry Center in Bethesda, or NDC, and of course, Naval Reactors Command, or NR. And that these three organizations actually divide the responsibility of maintaining dosimetry records among them and have overlapping priorities and requirements for the dosimetry system. At this point, our progress was quite stifled. Being able to reach out to these high-level commands was very difficult, and we did not always get immediate or timely responses from them. In some cases, they were not able to find responses at all. However, we were very fortunate to then hit our next major finding, that as it turns out, dosimetry data information is divided into a series of parallel databases, ARCMIS, TMID, and NDC. As we said in the video, ARCMIS and TMID are shipyard, vessel, or in the case of TMID, healthcare and hospital-bound systems. Each command maintains their own database and then submits data to NDC directly. However, these databases do not talk to each other. They only all separately send data to NDC. And at this point, we also learned that dosimetry records don't serve a immediate medical care functionality, but actually have a much different function than we initially assumed.
So here's come to our finding number 4. Dosimetry records are essential for radiation camps and litigation defense. On top of our 3 beneficiaries, commander, radiation health officer, and the sellers, we found out there's another hidden figures that also play in the dosimetry games. It's veteran. So top of 3 goals for them are good healthcare, afford VA health benefit, and afford personal records. So in this relevant data, we found out like from 2000 to 2017, there's no personnel who has like overexposure to the fibrin. And the total claims since 1971, the claims for the cancer treatment are like 1,100, but over 90% of these cases are denied. So here's what we found. We finally reached to our final mission model campus. So as you can see, our new beneficiary, Venturous, has added. In terms of feasibility, our key activities include feedback collection, development pathway, outsource searching, and the user onboarding. Next, viability, data retention, and time spent on claims audit trial are two major factors to major RCC. With all these new pieces of information attached to our MMC, we finally cleared of the question, who are all these faces in this dosimetry program? In this organizational chart, we draw out the connection between each beneficiary and how they affect each other. So we came up with 4 priorities for our final solution. It has to be secure, accessible by numerous parties, able to maintain separation of databases, and airdrop. So we ask ourselves if there's a platform to store and coordinate all records across the systems within a distributed network.
So here's what we end up. So in the beginning, we thought that's going to be really simple, like building a cloud storage platform, and we can just finish this. But well, the truth seems like it's really a lot to choose. So based on that, over that customer discovery, we realized this is not only the issues of the storage, but it's also the part of the coordinations amongst the systems. So this is why we comes up with our solutions, a private blockchains for the dosimetry records. So you may ask, what is blockchains? So blockchain technology is to distribute records distributed records database, which means you can storing an increasing list of the data, which means storing the block. Basically, you just upload the data right in the block, while you can just forming a chain of the block. So, and each block we're going to verify against each others and with the cryptographic hash functions. So basically, it will result in the features of the immutability, transparency, and securities. So imagine if we have blockchain network right in the naval dosimetry centers, which means right in the NDCs. So for officers can really easy to access the information that they require based on the different levels of usage and also the accessibilities. So even though there may be a data loss or even a gap or missing data in the paper documents, so officers could be really easy to recover all the required informations and verify based on who, what, when, and where. So this is why the usage of the distributed database technology really remind us we can avoid any unnecessary costs without sacrificing of the existing systems. So especially the system is only for more than 100,000 dosimetry records. And the biggest thing we try to focus is about the 30 days period. If we have a kind of blockchain network and officers can check it right in this network, it's going to save that 30 days like the approval records in physical mails. So you may ask, like, what will be the cost for this platform? How much would I need to pay? So estimated by the Ernest and Young's EY reports, the average cost to deploy a blockchain platform would be around $600,000 based on that 5 years forecast. So and based on this cost, there's including the onboardings, the clouds, the maintenance, as well as the monitorings. So and also you can do a pace as you go with your customer needs. So we try to overview all these objectives. We realize there will be major 3 benefits. So the first is the accessibility. And the second is the compatibilities. And the third, the most important part will be security. So this is why all these benefits is really driving us to understand, over the periods of the customer discovery. And at the end, we really make a big progress and really find our solutions. And this is how we learn the customer discovery is shaping our solutions and as well as our big pictures behind the issues. So, but the next step is something's viable, even though we have the solutions. I think over the 8 weeks, we do learn a really important lesson is people tend to be uncomfortable when they face a sudden dramatic change. So this is why we believe if there's a PPT framework to help us to create a socially acceptable change or behavior, and that's will be people will be in, let's say, the BMS and NRs. The process will be like the system between TMS and archives, which means the technology will be blockchains. So we hope these combinations will help us to accelerate the wheel of change in radiation health programs and to achieve the innovations right in dosimetry records.